bit about him, and then he'll tell you a little bit about him. And thank you we are now starting to record. So Carl's had a long career in journalism as a news photographer, project manager, and photo editor. He fell in love with photography as an adolescent, photographing school events with his dad's Leica, which, do you still own it, Carl?
Yes, I still have, I have that. No longer have the dad, but I've got the camera.
Yeah. So as an editor, he became known for reverence for the craft with a laser focus on honing content to its essential meaning and cropping really tightly. He continues to shoot and contribute to a wire service. Since the advent of the pandemic, his work has been focused on an outgoing project documenting nature close to home, now quite literally in his own backyard. And he evangelizes the importance of metadata to empower honest people on his blog. So he has a blog and a YouTube channel where he mixes advocacy on behalf of content creators with a steady stream of how-to content for photographers, web designers, and other content creators. He believes that communicating meta information about the ownership and content of visuals is essential to protecting the rights of artists and to preserving our visual culture. Sorry there. So, and he lives and works in South Florida with his wife and a furry management team. So here I'd like to introduce you to Carl Seibert. And
Why, thank you.
he will take over. And,
Alrighty then.
Rich, did you have a question?
No, just a comment to, we're going to mute everybody. And that means, Carl, you'll have to unmute yourself after I hit the mute all button, okay?
Okay.
And I just realized I have one more thing to say. The procedure today is going to be, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll keep reviewing the chat. And if there was a question that is specific to that picture, Carl allows me to interrupt him and he'll answer it. Anything that's general questions, we'll save till the end. And we have 3 submissions for conservation. And because conservation usually needs an explanation, we would be pleased if the people that did submit the conservation images, if they'd like to speak for a few minutes and just give us a context for why they felt that image was for conservation, that would be great. If you want to pass, just say pass, and we'll go from there. Okay, all right, so now here again, here's Carl. Go.
There we go. Rich muted me and I've unmuted. I have one thing to add to my professional bio. People who read my blog or go on my YouTube channel for years have kind of been pestering me about, do I do one-on-one coaching? And I was always, I would always blow them off. But no, I don't do that. It's a pro bono thing, whatever. Eventually, a reader actually talked me into it, and I did it with him, and it was way cool. I helped him work out how he was going to archive his photo collection, and taught him the skills and whatever. And I had a great time. So now I do that. And if anybody's actually interested, whatever, get in touch. So let's jump into some pictures. Enough of that. And there we go. Here we are. This is the nature, more or less general category, I guess. It looks like we have 21 images to look at. So let's go ahead and let's start looking. So here we have a bird. I guess this is an oriole.
Hold a second. Carl, you need to share your screen.
Yeah.
Oops, so sorry. Yeah, well, I'm looking at it. Looks good to me.
I forgot I was muted.
Yeah, let me see if I can find my Zoom controls. Come on, Zoom controls. Where are you?
I think if you hover at the
There we
bottom.
go. Yeah. I had to get back to that screen. So there we go. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, nature category. There's 21 pictures submitted to talk about. And the first one is a bird with a snack here. And it's really cool. It's nicely framed.
Are you going to make it larger, Carl?
Well, it's about as big. It fills my frame. Let me see if I can.
I'm only seeing a 2x2.
Really?
All we're seeing are the thumbnails.
Thumbnails, that's the word.
Oh, okay. Hang on. So in other words, now you see thumbnails.
Mm-hmm.
You are not now seeing a bird.
Just a thumbnail.
Okay, so let's go back and reshare the screen. And
While you're doing that, Peter and Barry, we would like to ask you to just turn off your video while there's the presentation. Just would be helpful. Thank you.
okay.
Bandwidth.
There we go. Hopefully now you're seeing the full screen bird.
Yes, we
All
are.
right. Yes, it is.
Woohoo. Okay, great. What happened was I shared the application instead of the monitor.
Very good.
So anyway, we have Mr. Oriole here with a snack. He's framed by foliage. Everything is cool. Let's take a look here and see, because I'm such a gearhead. This was a Canon 5D, and we have a 100 to 400 with a teleconverter on it. And of course, teleconverters never really help any quality, and we can kind of see in the background we've got a little bit of chromatic aberration and stuff, but it's really not bad. This lens is really pretty good and sharp. One thing I do see here, and I think we talked about this last time, if we look, the bird's in focus. He's cool, he's pretty sharp, but this picture is actually focused a little bit, which is an amazing thing. I'm so jealous because I'm always back focused, just always. Doesn't matter which way the lens turns or whatever. I'm always back focused. But anyhow, the claw here and this foliage is really, really, really super sharp. And it kind of catches my eye and kind of pulls me a little bit out of the picture. And what I might do in this circumstance, and I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying you necessarily can, but this is what I might do if I'm allowed. If this picture was to go to my agency and I did this, I would be fired just like totally instantly. But I might just blur this area just the tiniest bit, just to sort of push it back, to push the focus back on the main part of the picture. And let's see, I'll demonstrate this, and we're in Photoshop, and it's going to be different in different applications. I usually use On1 RAW because I do, and because it's quick, and it is really terrible for demoing. So we're doing this in Photoshop. So there's a couple more steps in Photoshop. It's not quite as elegant, but okay, fine. So here, let's blur our bird foot a little more than we really want to. And we will add a layer mask. I copied the layer to do this in Photoshop, and it's on top. And I'll add a layer mask to the layer, hide the layer. I'll take a paintbrush with some white paint, and I've set my flow to what, 15, 25%. Now this is sort of a demonstration, a very rough demonstration, because these are very small JPEGs and we don't have all day. And on top of that, we're on Zoom, so I'm kind of like overdoing, and just so that you kind of see the point. But with any luck at all, have I shifted the focus back a little bit more towards the bird's face? Does it look like that out there in Zoom world? Okay. So that's kind of all I would do here. That's what struck me. And otherwise, it's just, there's really not a lot to say about it. It's a picture of that bird. It's very well done, and there you go. So we'll move on to our next one, which is a deer. Let me see if I can get this floating toolbar to move. Is it going to do that for me? Yeah, there we go. Let's get it out of the way. Okay, Mr. Deer and Mrs. Deer here, and a fawn. And I, of course, am the vicious cropper, the butcher. I crop really tight, and some people are just really offended by that, sometimes including me. But again, this is one of these things where this is what I would do, and this is why I would do it. Does it appeal to you? Maybe, maybe not. So let's bring up, ooh. What's going on here? What I did accidentally was I just moved to 100% crop in Photo Mechanic, and the picture, instead of getting huge, got tiny. And that'll kind of be a theme here, because there's stuff that I can see and there's stuff that I can't see because I can't zoom into the pictures very much. But what would happen if we just kind of eliminated this piece of green foliage, that sort of heavy core of the piece of green foliage? Does that pop us into our deers a little bit? Does it make little deer a little more accessible to us? I kind of think so. And now our green piece of foliage is a framing element. Now, usually it's, people say light colors advance and dark colors recede. Kind of not the case in this case, because you could say, oh, well, that extra piece of foliage is just really dark, nobody's going to see it. But no, it had some weight to it. And otherwise, when we're talking about nature photography, last year we talked about how you're always under lensed. That's just a fact, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And these creatures are going to do what they're going to do, and they don't consult you. So there's some stuff that is just not under your control. And in this particular case, there's whatever this thing is. It looks like it's a target or something. And it's like, to have a shoulder mounted missile and just to blast that thing, it would make things nicer. But it doesn't really bother me that much. It's fine. You know, we'll just live with it. Yes, you could retouch it out of there. Although that one is not as easy as it seems. You kind of go, oh, that's out of focus. It's in the bokeh. That should be a real easy retouch. Actually, it wouldn't be a real easy retouch. And the thing is, that might be wrong for you. It might be wrong for your retention. It might be wrong for your client. You just might not want to go. You just might not want to go there at all. I think I might set the black point a little more aggressively on this picture too, a little more contrast. But basically, I am happy to have met Mrs. Deer. And here we have another, I believe this is another Oriole. Yep. A beautiful picture. The metadata is up right now, and this person cleared their metadata, depriving me of the opportunity to comment about what kind of camera they own or anything like that, but that's actually perfectly fine. I kind of like to do that. And I personally really like to see a caption on pictures and really like to see what's going on and something about the context and something about the meaning and the intent, which isn't all that important in this particular case because it's fairly obvious. The intent is to show us this bird, and we're doing a really good job of it. One thing that I see that I find it crops up in my pictures all the time and kind of bothers me, and maybe I shouldn't say this because, you know, maybe I should feel guilty because maybe you've not ever noticed it and it's never bothered you, but I see the hand of man in this picture. See, like right there, that little twig has been pruned, and so is that one, and so is that one, and that might be what happened down here. I see that, and sometimes I just go, darn, I just wanted to show the bird. And I wanted everything to look as it would be in nature. And it is in nature, even if it's in my backyard, and even if my wife has pruned those things. But then again, there's another way of looking at it. You know, we are in the backyard, or we're in some kind of habitat that somebody cares for. And that shows here. And that's a good thing. We're going to talk about conservation pictures in a while. And this could play to that theme. Hypothetically, and I'm making this all up here, but hypothetically, we could be talking about how species are thriving in environments that have been worked on or have been restored, or more to the point, National Wildlife Federation backyard environments, you know, where people groom their property in an urban setting in a way that's cool for wildlife. So there could be a conservation story here, whatever. Anyway, it's just a thing that I notice. I notice it in my own photos a lot. And sometimes I wish it wasn't there. So now where are we? We have, no, this person's not going to tell me what kind of bird this is. Is this a heron of some sort?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
no, it's a Aninga.
Ah, okay. All righty. We have a nice gesture on the part of the birds. This is like a good moment. We have to spread wings, and he's reaching around in this really cool curved sort of motion to groom himself. That's pretty nifty. We have the pattern of the palm leaves in the background, and judging from the file name of the picture, I think that's what we were going for here. Totally interestingly, in this batch of pictures, there are several pictures that look a little bit light on my monitor, which is interesting, because you need to calibrate that monitor and make sure that it's all completely correct. If that's the case with this picture, we might possibly make a little bit of a curves move here. We can clip. If you can see here on the histogram, it's telling me that there is no real black in this photo, you know, like a real quick way. So if you clip to your histogram, if you move your black point to the point at which there is no more data in the histogram, there are no more, you know, to the point at which there is data, I'm sorry, in the histogram. If you just kind of chop off that dead area, what you do is you then have shifted a black point to actual black somewhere. There is some pixel in this thing. If I put that in the right place, that's really black. And I seem to have a little more punch in Mr. Bird here by doing that. Let's just check and see if I make things lighter. Nah. If I make things darker, no, I'm starting to crush the bird. So I'll just leave that as it was. And let's see, what other things can I do to this person's picture that may or may not suit them? Well, of course, it's me, so yeah, let's crop it. Now, see, on this side here, I have these palm fronds, and then we have the same thing happening again. So I'm kind of always of the school that says, say it once and say it clearly. And I'll just sort of tidy that up. That might be helpful. Might be helpful. And like I said, if it's your picture, you just might not think so at all, but whatever. And, oops. Oh. Photoshop didn't like that. Let's ditch it and start again. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. It's me. It's the curves layer that I already had up. I need another one. So I was saying that I usually work in a different software. Now I'm proving it to you. Okay.
Hmm.
So what about the tone of our palm leaves? Maybe a little better now? Maybe, maybe not.
Mhm.
So pop out of that. We will pop back to Mr. Paintbrush. Make it bigger, set our flow way too high so that this goes really fast. And yeah, that's a little bit of an artificial vignette too. But I find leaves, a lot of times they turn towards the sun, and one side of the leaf is a reflector and the other side of the leaf is like really, really black. So I put that possibility out there to the crowd. Thumbs up or thumbs down? That make anything any better?
I think so.
Okay then. So moving right along to the next creature that we have. Oh, I love this. Here we have, I'm assuming that this is Mr. and Mrs. Heron and they're decorating, feng shuiing the nest or something.
Mhm.
That's what I kind of get. It's like, yeah, honey, the couch looks better over there. But I really think this is a cool moment. You have to watch wildlife for a really long time until they decide to do something that suits you compositionally. We've got the two, yikes. Okay. Just make that go away. There we go. All right, get my regular cursor back. We have these two S curves that are interlocking. How cool is that? We have what's going on with the beaks. That's, wildly cool as well. We have the one eye from the one bird, and it's very seriously focused on what's going on. And it's also for us, for gearhead's sake, it's in focus. And, it's all really pretty nice. Would I crop a little tighter? And maybe take a little bit of this blue space off the top? Yeah, I probably would because, whatever, it's me. But I love that picture. And here we have an alligator. Oh, and this is interesting. Looking at the metadata, Mr. Alligator here was shot with one of those one-piece cameras that's like really easy to carry around.
Mhm.
The best camera in the world is the camera that you have. And if there's a long hike involved, that one is probably looking pretty good. I kind of like what's going on with our alligator. It's me, so I would explore maybe having Mr. Alligator just journey kind of all the way across the frame instead of part way. There is an argument for putting him close to the, let's call it the destination side of the frame. And by the way, if I had third lines, his eye would be right on an intersection of third lines, which is classically pretty cool. And it often works. If it does work, it does. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. This particular case, though, I'm not seeing that tension of him coming close to the side of the frame where both his literal movement and his force is going. So I kind of think I would do that. Like that. There's also the matter of his angle across the frame, which is really good in that it's a diagonal. He's going from corner to corner. Another way to approach it would be to move over to the left, and then he would be going right straight across the middle of the frame, in which case you could make an extremely horizontal banner-like crop, or maybe there's a reflection that you could use. That's another picture that could come out of this same circumstance. But again, the realities of wildlife photography is it's really easy for some editor to say, hey, why did you walk to the left? Well, you know, it was this big piece of water and there was another alligator there and he had his mouth open and I wanted to keep my foot. So that's probably entirely academic because you were where you were, and fortunately you waited and you framed this guy nicely and you got him where you needed him to be, and it all worked out. So we hop right along here, and now we have, is this guy a coyote? Yep, he's a coyote. Okay, he's looking right at us. It's coyote portrait. Looking at things, we're wide open, which is good. And all those twigs and brush and stuff are back in the background and not bothering us too much. And circa 2022 super gearhead would say something about the background rendition of this lens. They're either going to like it or they're not going to like it. Once again, the realities of doing this sort of stuff make that pretty meaningless. You know, this is the lens for your system at this focal length, and whatever the designers at Canon chose are what you're going to have. Now, this business down here, let me turn this crop tool off before it does something weird to me again. This business down here kind of bothers me a little bit because in this particular case, yeah, light advances, dark recedes. And so we have this thing and it's in the bottom of our frame. But if we go over here, behind this white thing are the animal's feet. So I can make a really strong argument that says that doing the first thing I would try is maybe not the best thing. On the other hand, I don't know, that might work. Maybe I go all the way up here. How about that? Now this depends on a couple of things, one of which is how much frame do we actually have here? And I have no idea because these are just itty bitty little JPEGs. So it could be right now we're at what, 104% just to fill the monitor on my computer. So this just might not even be a possibility, but it could be something to look at. I worked for a person once who is a flat out genius and really very, very talented. And when we were editing, he would always tell us, never do one and done. You know, go with your first instinct, but always question it, always try something else. And when you're a photographer, particularly you're editing your own photos, kind of doesn't work that way. You know, you see the photo, you see where you want to go with it. You maybe even saw that when you shot it or saw that when you chimped it, and you just do it. You draw that crop and you draw it one time and it comes out where you think it's perfect. It might not be. So maybe it's a good idea to try some extra things. Again, we could try the burning in thing a little bit in the background of this picture, just a little bit to shift our focus inward towards the fox, towards the coyote. In many software programs, there's actually a vignette function that just does like an artificial vignette, like it was a lens made in the 60s. I sometimes try that. Sometimes I like it, and sometimes I go, oh no, Carl, you're messing with nature. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. But we should always keep all the ideas available to us. Keep every brush you've got, all the colors on your palettes. Eventually, you're going to have to make a choice and live with it. And when you do, don't feel guilty about it. It's like, I made that choice and it's fine, and don't second guess yourself. Then, when you're actually working on the picture, go right ahead and second guess yourself. So here we have a bird taking off, And we have a very nice reflection. So we have the pattern that repeats in the frame, which is really cool. Nice composition. Once again, hey, it's me. So, oh, there we go. And again, this picture is actually smaller than my monitor. So it looks like it's sharper than all get out, but I can't really tell because the file is so small. Do we really want the plants on the very top? Maybe, maybe not. How about that plant on the right-hand side? Is it really a framing element or is it really kind of a pain in the neck? That's an interesting question. Maybe, maybe not. But beautiful picture, nicely captured moment. There we go. Nice tones. I would probably, you know, in this picture, this is another one of these where my first instinct would be to pick up the brush. I usually use a Wacom tablet, so it's usually a stylus. My first instinct would be pick up the brush, throw a little bit of a vignette sort of thing in the corners. And I'm pretty sure if this was my picture, my next instinct would be to hit the delete or the back out button and say, nah, that wasn't a good idea. And here we are again. We have another bird in flight. I'm liking the arrangement of the wings a lot. I know that this is a big debate in bird photography. It's like, where should the wings be? What looks graceful? What looks powerful? What looks exciting and what doesn't? I know there's lively discussions to be had, but you know, I kind of like the way this guy is. This bird is doing this. Composition-wise, we have a bird. We have a nice, clean background. I kind of like the fact that it's starting to rain. We got the little raindrops. That's kind of cool. We could make this composition a little more horizontal to play off the flight of the bird, or not, depending. What's going on here? Is this lunch? Did this guy just swallow a fish or something?
I think that's actually normal for that bird.
Ah, okay. All righty then. Let's go ahead. And here we have a dragonfly. And so what are we doing here? This was a 100 to 600 zoomed all the way in on an APS-C camera. So we have the equivalent of a 900 millimeter lens, which is a real monster to try to hold at a pretty low shutter speed for such a really long lens. And I suspect if we zoomed in here, we'd actually probably find a little shake, but nothing life-threatening. And I like what's going on in the background. I like the colors. Tones are nice. So not much to say. Nice insect. Here we have, again, a reflection where we are repeating the top half of the composition in the bottom. Would I move this to put the dividing line more in the middle? Yeah, I might do that. Another possibility is to eliminate the sand at the bottom. So now our background is super, super clean. There's like nothing going on in it. We don't have as much of the reflected bird. I'll set that crop. We don't have as much of the reflected bird, but we didn't have the whole reflected bird anyway. So I don't think this is one of those cases of the book map mirror image kind of thing. This person cleared their metadata, so we don't know how close or how far we are, but it's bird photography, so we're under lensed because everybody's always under lensed most of the time. And it kind of looks like we might be at the very edge of the quality of this picture. It might not be any more there really for us. But that's cool. You know, some pictures want to be really huge on your wall, and some pictures want to be smaller. That's just kind of the way things go. Now here we have another one. There we are. Now this one, there's obviously tons of data here. There's a lot of detail in this picture. I really like that we're at eye level on this bird. Somehow get the feeling that the beach where we met Mr. Turn is probably kind of chilly. I don't know if that's true, but the bird looks a little chilly to me. So that means that our photographer was lying on their belly on this probably moist sand on this probably cold beach, and nothing but props for the dedication that went into that. And that's where good photos come from, is dedication and hard work. So there we go. It's a very nice portrait of the Tern. Here's the fox. I knew there was a fox in here somewhere. And there we go. Very nice. We're very intimate. Compositional forces take us right to the fox's eye. We have this diagonal, which is, yes, it's just above the third line intersection. Takes us kind of down the fox's nose. And they're so cat-like the way they rest and they curl their paws around and they do all of that sort of thing. This is another case where I would be real tempted to do a little bit of burn, maybe bring this rock a little bit down in tone and maybe back up here. Well, what the heck, let's just go ahead. Let's just go ahead and do some of it. Now, once again, these are small JPEGs. They've already been compressed, so they aren't going to respond right to this sort of thing. And it's real possible that we won't see it anyway because we're on Zoom. But let's just, we'll take our tones down. We'll add a little bit of contrast maybe. That's overdoing, which is probably correct for Zoom. Do it kind of about like that. Then invert, because that's how you do these things in Photoshop. Pick up our paintbrush and just do a little bit of this. Now, notice on the rock here that it looks like we have some areas that are actually little tiny blown highlights. And if you try to do too much with an area like that, it's very likely to come and bite you. It's very likely to start looking artificial or forced really quickly. Sometimes you see an area like that, and discretion is the better part of valor. Let's see if we did good here. Any opinions from anybody? Is that a worthwhile change or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Subtle.
Well, and you know what? It's entirely possible. I'm actually seeing it on my screen as opposed to on Zoom. It's entirely possible that you can't see it. Let's just go crazy with it here. Let's go completely nuts. Is it like appearing now? It looks truly ghastly on my screen at this point.
Yes.
We punched through the Zoom layer.
Yeah.
But okay, that was fun. That was a fun fox. And here. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love this. I so wish this was my picture. Yeah, Mr. Snake meet Mr. Alligator. Yeah, holy moly.
Mm.
And this looks like it's a pretty big file too. I bet this picture, if we were seeing, if we were seeing a full-size file, I bet there's a ton in this picture. Let's be a gearhead and let's look. This is an ILCE -7RM4A. I actually had to look that up. That's a Sony A7 R4, which is a very nice high resolution camera, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 megapixels, 48, something like that. So, so yeah, there's probably a lot going on with Mr. Alligator. In the Carl School of consider manipulating tones to push people into your composition, maybe darkening up Mr. Gator's scales here a little, to be done subtly and to be done tastefully. Maybe a little of that. Maybe we could go in here and maybe we could lighten the light areas a little bit. In other words, paint in a curve that's up a little in the highlights and maybe up a little in the midtones. That might be a fun thing to do. Again, season to taste. Your sensibilities matter a lot more than mine do, unless I'm your editor, in which case my sensibilities are the final word. But you can do that. And I don't think, a little bit of that, I don't think hardly anybody would complain. That would slide by the Zuma truth test, no problem. And yeah, I just love that. It's just such a neat picture. Here we have a screech owl from the look of it. And yep, it is a screech owl. Okay. Once again, it's just about the size of my desktop, so there's not a lot that I could do about it at all. This is interesting because we have this piece of web strap here, and we have two thingies here, which suggests to me that perhaps there's a tether on this guy. Maybe he's a pet screech owl. I just don't know.
I believe this picture was taken at a sponsored by, well, Bush Wildlife and another location, and it was a fundraiser for injured animals, and so the animals that they had there were ones that couldn't be released. And so, yeah, I think they were tethered.
And they maybe bring them to wherever
Yes,
you
one
might be or
location.
something like. Yeah.
There
And you can see here that there and there, this looks like his bamboo has been cut. You can see the
I think it's a
hand neck.
palm. Yeah, it's a palm tree.
It's a palm. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we talk about conservation in a minute, there's a conservation story going on here about these people, what they're doing, what the animals look like, viewed in that light. This is a wonderful picture of an animal in that context to me, because the fact that the animal is captive and that he's tethered is shown, but it's shown somewhat subtly. And as you look at the picture, you look at the bird, then you move into, oh, there's a tether here and what's going on with that. And of course, I might like to see, depending on the setting, I might like to see the wider scene that has all the people and they're crowding around and they're looking at the bird and the handlers and what they're doing. you know, I might like to see all of that in terms of storytelling. Um, and while we're at it, while we're hypothetically reshooting this assignment for this person, doing all these things that they may or may not have had the time and opportunity to do, there's an opportunity here too. You could move in and you could, well, here, I'll do it with the crop tool. You could move in and just do that. And you could have this really cool, just a bird,
Mhm.
you know, portrait of bird sort of picture. I get the feeling with this one that you would not want to do that with the crop tool. But you could do it in shooting, and you could probably particularly do it in shooting because this critter is more or less tied to that branch.
Yeah.
So here we have another coyote. Might have been the same coyote in a regal pose. We have the nice evergreen foliage around him, and he's just coming out. He's looking ahead. That's really nice. And I mean, I totally wouldn't be me without suggesting that. It's the white thing at the bottom kind of takes me away from Mr. Coyote. And I'm happier without it. Now, I don't know what the white thing at the bottom was. The white thing at the bottom could be a bit of snow that hasn't melted yet.
Mm.
In which case it presents a conundrum for the photographer, because if that is a piece of snow and the photographer hiked up the mountain to find this creature and waited for hours and whatnot, the snow and the weather could be really important to the story, and it then becomes really hard to go, oh, it's not reading properly in this picture and I don't need it. You know, you're sort of giving up a child in that circumstance, because you very well may have an emotional attachment to that piece of white stuff. And so again, with proper respect to Tim Rasmussen, try it both ways and see what happens. It's also entirely possible that that white thing was at the edge of a concrete walkway, in which case we're back at that same philosophical divide. We're talking about conservation in a minute. Is that part of the story? Is this little guy living in a sort of an artificial habitat or a reclaimed habitat or something like that? So maybe the existence of the white thing is part of the story. But honestly, my read on it was, this is a magnificent animal. It's a wonderful picture of this animal. I would go, okay, fine. We're looking at the animal. And if we are telling a story about the habitat, I would do that in another picture. In today's world, particularly, we're not usually talking about presenting our pictures in a one-shot presentation like we would in a newspaper, particularly in an old newspaper. More than likely, if we're publishing this picture and we're showing it to other people, we're going to have an opportunity for another picture. It's going to be a blog, or it's going to be a story on a web page, or some sort of a presentation like that. And we're going to have the opportunity to back up. We're going to have the opportunity to do a picture that really reads about the habitat and not the coyote, so that we don't have to try to accomplish everything all in one shot. But what a cool animal. It's just a lovely animal. Here we have a creek. This is not Cherry Creek, the creek behind my house, but sort of kind of could be. This looks to me like it's more out in the Everglades or something. It's a bit more of an unspoiled environment. And what do we have here? Oh, I will look up here. This is another one of those all-in-one cameras. Rich says they're called bridge cameras that are light and easy to carry. This is the kind of a scene that historically would have been favored by large format photographers. Clyde Butcher sort of people with the view camera and the incredible detail and the incredible tones going on. And someday you just don't have your view camera with you and you have to use what you got. And so don't avoid shooting a picture like this because you just go, oh, this isn't ideal for my camera. Because again, the camera you have is the best camera in the world at that particular moment. But you would be forgiven for pining for that Sony A7R4 with its 50-ish megapixels. Tonally, I'm actually thinking, let's go to Photoshop. Let's take a look at this thing. Tonally, we might be in a place here with this picture where we want maybe some more blacks that we don't have. Let's pop on a curves layer and just see what might be going on. Interestingly, according to the histogram, somewhere in this picture, there probably is an actual bit of full black, but I'm thinking on my monitor, this looks a little bit better with the shadows pulled down a little bit. It's going to give us a little bit more contrast. Let's get that out of the way. Yeah. I want to go for even more contrast. And let's see. This is probably the way I would do it on my monitor, and you probably can't see it on Zoom. So let's just throw taste out the window and just totally overdo it and see if that does anything for anybody. Let's go back to kind of realistic. The way I would do this, and again, being me, I might lower the tones on that part of the scene a little bit. Maybe the sky, you know, or maybe not. But if you can see here, I didn't clip my darkest tones like a lot more. I went down here into not quite a 3/4 tone, 7/8 tone, I guess you'd call it. And I took that down to bring up my contrast. Did I crush anything? Did I crush this black spot in this really dark spot in here? And I'm running my cursor around. And if you look up here, if you look at the info palette, while I do this, you can see I'm moving my cursor and my values are changing. There is information going on in there. I haven't completely crushed it and closed it up. Now, I certainly have made it really dark. And if I wanted to see in there, or if I just wanted to have that be a little less heavy, maybe I wouldn't go quite that far. And as you can see, if I go, oh, I don't want to do that in there, the rest of the picture goes sort of not to my taste. So this is another case where I would paint in my corrections probably. And intent matters too. Are we going to look at this picture on a computer screen? Are we going to look at it in a publication? Are we going to look at it on a print? And a piece of advice that you hear really a lot nowadays, and it's really good advice, so it's a good thing that we're hearing it, is to make prints. If you have, if you're looking at your pictures, and even if you don't necessarily absolutely want the print, it's a really nice thing to kind of know how it would print and learn to be able to target pictures so that prints come out the way you want them to come out. And then when you do have a stack of prints, that's a pretty nice way to experience your pictures. And this is one of these things where, you know, I've heard that, I've even said that in the past, and I'm just kind of coming around to it myself. I am building up a box of prints, and it's fun for nostalgia. I mean, a little bit, it takes me back to the 70s when I was starting, and that's the only way you saw any picture was you printed it yourself in your own darkroom, getting hypo stains on your clothes and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of that, but it is a really wonderful way to experience pictures. And nowadays we have online labs that are really good, that are really cheap. It's amazing. I use Miller's, there's Bay Photo. I think Dale locally is almost in the same sort of category where you can get an 8x10 print for $3 or $6 or something like that, without staining your clothes, without having a dark room. And that's a thing to consider. So we'll go onwards and upwards here. We only have what, 4 more pictures left. Here we have some more turns. They're kind of little ones. Yep, I'd tighten it up. Of course I would, because that's what I just always do. Oh, it looks to me like we actually see the fish in the wave. That's pretty cool. That's nifty. Okay. I kind of like it. Quality is good. It's just another really nice picture. Jumping forward. Here we have a little bunting. So this guy is an indigo bunting, not a painted bunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then. Twigs. You know, I photograph flowers every now and again. A bird flies into the backyard and you know, it happens. And twigs and branches and stems, and they're just all over the place, and they're just a constant fight. And the first thing I do when I see a twig, you know, I don't think about the twig and go, oh, well, can I ethically burn this down to where this twig will recede into the background and nobody will notice that I did the work because I did it so well. First thing I do is that I just go, hey, saw that bad boy off. And if I'm not missing anything, that settles that in just one stroke. And this is another picture. I'm going to calibrate this monitor because this just could be me. This is another picture where I think I would like to see a little more contrast. And again, it could be me and my monitor, or it could be the picture. Let's just see what happens. Let's pop to Photoshop. Oops. No, that's not, because it insisted upon opening in the wrong order. All right. Never mind. Forget I said that. But anyway, yeah, I'd consider a little more contrast. And here we have some lily pads. Not sure I get what's going on compositionally in this picture. Move a little to the left, a little to the right. I do see a sort of diagonal progression here and here. And maybe that's another way to go. Maybe. Bottom line is it's a perfectly nice picture of lily pads. But again, you should always think about how you can make a composition better, either in shooting or in post-production. And with different subjects, that's another sort of topic where sometimes you have freedom of action and sometimes you don't. If it's a bird picture, oh my gosh, if you get the darn thing in the frame, that's enough of a miracle to make me happy, and then worry about the niceties later. There are people who would approach a picture like this and they would take their view camera and they would set it up and they would tweak and they would tweedle all day long until they get just exactly the composition that they wanted. There are other people who are maybe like ex-news photographers like me who would blast this thing and make 50 frames of it and fiddle around later. And then, of course, there's Mr. Crop Tool. And I think I would do that. I think I would go with these diagonal force lines that run across the lily pads from here to here, just kind of going corner to corner in the frame. And I've got a big blue thing over here, and I've got a reflected blue thing here. I kind of like the arrangement of these little buds, I guess they are. And another way of doing this, if you're considering a crop in the camera or later, try it both ways. Look at what you cropped off and you go, am I going to miss any of this? Yeah, I got a big empty hole here. I got 2 lily pads, but I got a whole lot more lily pads over here. So I'm good. I'm thinking I would probably do that. And I think my justification is that maybe I'm liking the composition a little more. And when I look at what I chopped away to do that, it wasn't anything terribly vital. And that kind of sounds like the way people think when they're writing and they're editing words. And yeah, it is actually. It's the same thought process exactly. So here we go. This is the last of our general category pictures. Pretty cool moment with this bird that I don't recognize, and I probably should, because I think we've had one of these in our creek at one point or another.
It's a common gallinule.
The gallinule, yes, that's what it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have a parent and child here. We have a chick, and I'm going to assume that it's the mother bird. They've probably just delivered dinner, and we have the flapping wing, which is pretty cool because it's not pin sharp. We have motion, and that's nifty. That's a little bit daring. That's a little bit of a risk as a photographer. How do I do this? Do I go with like a shutter speed that guarantees everything sharp, guarantees that I quote get unquote the picture? Or do I slow down a little bit and suggest this movement in the flapping wing, which is pretty cool? And it's working pretty well here because I really don't see any motion in this picture. In terms of camera shape, that kind of motion. So I think we're really in good shape. And again, this is one of those sort of compact cameras where you can't depend on the camera to give you oodles and oodles of more data than you need. You only get what you get. So that's interesting. And of course, gotta think about doing it. Now, the leaf thing that I was talking about earlier, you look at how these leaves have turned up against the sun, and they are just beaming that sun right back at you, and that makes them really bright. So one way of dealing with that is to chop a bunch of them off. And that might pull us more into the interaction between the two birds here. The other way of dealing with this leaf problem would be to change the tones, to burn them in a little bit. So here I make my pitch for if you possibly can shoot your pictures in RAW so that you have other tones available in the file so that you can do that. Because like if I was going to take this JPEG as we see it right here, it's small, it's compressed. These are kind of the choices that are going to live forever. I can't really do much with this in post-processing. If I start to burn down those leaves, I'll go a little ways and they'll be fine, and a little way further and they're going to die on me. They're going to look pasty and artificial and manipulated, and it won't be a good thing at all. Whereas if I had the raw of this particular picture, I'm looking and I don't see anything blown in these leaves. Possibly maybe right there, but I'm not seeing blown highlights in the leaves. I think in the raw, there's probably stuff to work with. And I don't know whether this was a JPEG out of camera or this was a JPEG that the photographer made later. The metadata doesn't tell me immediately. So I could be, completely talking through my hat here, but if the raw file existed in this photo and the photographer had it, they'd have a little more leeway to push us even more into the interaction between the two birds. And yeah, you could also dodge a little more contrast into the bird's eye, maybe a little more contrast into some places in the bird's feathers, a little bit of tasteful high pass sharpening, perhaps applied only on the right parts of the bird and not anywhere else, could once again pull us in, make it pop a little, make better use of the data that we have. And that's kind of what I would do there. In the meantime, it's a real nice moment. And I just, I love the daring choice of using the shutter speed that gave us the blur on the wings. That was kind of a gutsy move. Understanding that is also possibly inadvertent as well. That happens sometimes. It happens to me sometimes. But I'm going to go with the theory that that was intentional and that it worked out really well. So that takes us out of these pictures. Does anybody have comments, criticisms, brickbats, questions, or anything else before we jump to the next category?
If you do, you'll just unmute yourself.
Yeah, just yell. I'm a little surprised at the whole respectful, quiet thing is a little foreign to me. I'm more used to being yelled at, but I do know that Nancy told you to do that. So
Yeah,
so
everybody's on mute. So
yeah.
May I ask a question about the tricolor reflected so well? Would you ever make that a vertical?
You're breaking up a little bit. Which picture are we talking about?
It's the bird that's got the complete reflection.
She's talking about the tri-colored heron, which is the one with the reflection in the blue water.
Ah, this guy.
That one.
Well, a question after my own heart. What could we do? Does this work? Oh, yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's a good idea. Yep. We've taken this frame, we've divided it top to bottom. We've done the directly viewed subject, we've done the indirectly viewed subject. There's a tonal difference between them because of the efficiency of the water as a mirror and all that nonsense. We're seeing it two different angles, two different levels of sharpness, and we don't have to worry about the grasses anymore because they're just plain gone. This picture looks to me like it's got loads of detail and that we could probably get away with this and still make it really pretty big. Let's look up here in the EXIF data. It's a Nikon D7100, which is a nice APS-C camera. The lens is a 200 to 500 5.6. If that's the lens that I'm thinking about, that's really nice and sharp. The ISO is reasonable. So yeah, I think that's totally a doable thing.
Thank you.
And thank you, but I feel I don't know, vindicated or something, because I feel like I've made a convert to the chainsaw method of cropping. All righty, so let's see if
So we have the 3 conservation images, correct?
we have the 3 conservation images. when Nancy and I talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm a little bit surprised because when I think of conservation photography, I tend to think in terms of seeing a whole essay or a whole story or something like that, instead of just one single image. But I don't know how that would fit into the way the program is structured. I don't know how that was going. I think Nancy's plan at this point, I think we have 3 images by 3 different photographers, or about 3 different things. And I believe that Nancy's plan at this point was to ask the photographers if they're willing to tell us about what's going on and tell us about what the intent is here.
So does somebody want to speak on this one? At all? Tell us the location or why you thought this fit into the category of conservation. No takers. So I would say just critique it on.
So I'll just make it up. Yeah,
for
okay. Okay,
Fishing line hanging from the tree.
yes.
Ah.
And I'm looking at the file name, and the file name is Detritus of Fishing. So that's an interesting thing because, of course, you know, we're talking about earlier, the hand the man in the picture. Is it the point or is it a distraction? In this particular case, it's kind of the point. This is another one of those pictures that kind of wants to have that super high resolution, super high quality treatment where every one of these beautiful glowing transilluminated leaves, and we have the rimlet Spanish moss, and you know, where you can just get lost in all of those details, and it's so beautiful. And then there's this fishing lure dangling there, and it's kind of subtle. You don't see that fishing lure right at first. Spider webs do this a lot. If I do a picture that's backlit or rimlit like this, I have spider webs that I didn't see jump up and annoy me, which is, you know, if it's a spider, it's just an annoyance. And you know, I personally actually don't like spiders, but you know, whatever. They've got a right to be in the environment just like I do. In this particular case, it's this nasty piece of fishing line that somebody just left there. And yeah, this speaks to conservation. And again, I would expect when we're talking about conservation in pictures, I would tend to expect essays or stories that take us from one place to another, take us from a premise to a conclusion, and how this might fit into such a presentation is just me guessing. You know, I'm totally making this up, but yeah, I could kind of see this. I could see a lot of pictures of this beautiful environment, and I could see them counterposed with pictures that show kind of bad things happening to the environment. Or as a single picture, the idea that you look at the picture and you look at it for a while and all of a sudden you go, oh, holy Toledo, look at what happened there. That's kind of an interesting approach too. So that's kind of cool. So this picture kind of bridges, to me, there's a couple or 3 veins of conservation photography. You can kind of do pictures that show the beauty of what's at risk and what we're trying to protect. And I think we have another one of those in here. You can do pictures of what's gone wrong. You know, your seabird covered in crude oil, you know, some Sebastião Salgado-esque kind of things of strip mining going on, and the horrors being inflicted on nature. In Salgado's case, the horrors are also inflicted on humanity. And then there's the more hopeful sort of vein of people doing something about it, where you have pictures of the people and they're out in this environment and they're clipping down the debris and they're fixing things up, and they're preserving land and things are getting better and species are coming back, and we can talk about that sort of thing happening in a picture. It's all about intent, and it's all about what you're trying to do, where the picture's going to go, and hopefully how it's going to work. And I suppose philosophically the most important thing to say here, talking to members of the Audubon Society, is get out and do it. Clearly, we're looking at these pictures and we've got some really good photographers here. We have some talent. Let's put it to use. Let's go out and do some projects like this. Find some people who need pictures about conservation and give them some. So there. Here we have another picture, and this is kind of interesting. The three pictures that we have here are pretty cool because they illustrate points that we want to talk about. And of course, the pictures that we saw first, pretty much all those pictures are pictures that speak about conservation in one of those ways or another. We're looking at the environment. We're looking at the animals. We're looking at humanity's impact on the environment for good or for bad. And we're looking at what's at stake. Here we have a detail. And yes, it's almost a cliche. It's kind of a hackneyed thing for an editor to say, but details are good. You're telling a story. For one thing, look for the really telling detail. For another thing, look for a detail just so that you can break the flow of scale. We're doing a picture, we're on that creek, for example, and we're doing all of these wide pictures. And if you just do wide picture, wide picture, wide picture, you're going to run into a point where people, you might need a break. People are going to get a little bored. It's going to get repetitious. You can use a detail for that. And of course, a detail can still be pretty, let's say, vivid or iconic while it's being really small. This could be a one picture drop in a magazine layout. It could be a little picture that you flow text around in a web layout, or I guess you don't say layout in a web page, but in a web page. And it's still going to be pretty powerful. And then, of course, just within this picture is a jumping off point for the argument about what's the best way to do conservation and treat a habitat. Do you keep humans trotting around away, or is it better to have humans have some access and be able to enjoy and appreciate what's going on in that environment? And of course, the practical side of me says yes, both. Depending on the circumstances, sometimes the fragility of the situation means that we keep our tromping boots the heck away from it. And other times we do want to share it and we do want to see it. And of course, in this particular case, this is somebody's private property. And so there's a whole privacy issue. Maybe it is a fragile environment. I don't know, maybe this landowner is, maybe they're cooking meth out back by the barbecue grill and they don't want people looking around. I don't know what's going on. But it's interesting. It's an interesting looking little poster. I believe they call this plastic stuff coroplast, and it's corrugated, like corrugated cardboard. I remember how we had the leaves, and the leaves would turn against the sun one way and towards the sun the other way. And that kind of happens with this thing too. And this might be asking for a little work in post-processing to try to tone down those highlights that we're kind of losing a little bit. And we might even be able to sort of emphasize the wear and the grunginess of the sign and that sort of thing a little bit. Again, we don't want to be doing anything that's not real. We don't want to be putting anything on this landowner that's unfair. But just visually, the no symbol, the eagle, the binoculars, I might try to punch that out, make it read just a little bit better. Now, tonally, if you're of the have I depicted this thing in a high quality, accurate sort of way, yes. This is like the nicest depiction of weathered wood that you're going to see this week, for sure. So this is kind of what this poster looks like in a physical sense, but it might not be exactly what this poster looks like in a perceptual sense. As a human being looking at it, you might not see it just exactly this way. And my philosophy is the most realistic or accurate picture is the one that works the way a person sees the scene. It's not about ratios and tonal values and all that sort of nonsense. So here we have another picture. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I just blast over the no trespassing sign person and cut you off? I think I did. Are you there? Did I get any of that right?
I think you got a little bit of it right. Yes, it's a very fragile habitat. However, the habitat that they are trying to keep you off of is not private property.
So we have this person blocking access to public property,
Or
which
attempting to. Yeah.
attempting to. In South Florida, that's usually a beach access issue.
Yeah.
But same rules apply here. So that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's a huge public park,
Uh-huh.
very fragile habitat, very unique habitat, like one of the centers of biodiversity.
Uh-huh.
And has a lot of conservation organizations that monitor it and whatever. But if you look at the picture, there's like a bullet holes in it. It's like those people are out there trying to discourage anybody who wants to use binoculars or, stop on the side of the road to look at something. It's a very hostile environment, which is a challenge to conservation as far as I can tell.
Wow. So this thing right here, that's a bullet hole? That's like
No.
a 22 or something?
Underneath property rights,
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. So that's not a nail. That's a punch through. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow.
yeah, and these things are all over the place. It's very evident how the neighbors feel.
Interesting. Interesting.
Wow.
So that suggests a couple of things. I'm the metadata guy, of course. So nice caption that told me a lot of that. I would enjoy it. And we'd probably be here till midnight because I'd be talking about every last little thing in every one. But yeah, or write a story, do a blog. Maybe somebody else does a story, maybe in some publication or in a blog or on a website or whatever. And I don't know what the objective would be necessarily. I mean, are these people going to change their ways if there's public pressure? I don't know. You're going to win them over? I don't know. Is it just a bad example that we want to hold up so that other people do it? Once again, I don't know. But after 40 years in journalism, I have to believe that the more we know about the situation, whatever it is, the more we know about it, the more we understand about it, the better off we're going to be. Whether we have an activist goal in mind in telling the story or not, I think telling the story itself just helps us. It just helps the cause. So there. All righty. So this time I will be polite. And whose is this? What can somebody tell us about what's going on here?
Well, this is mine, and I think I meant to put in the other category, but actually I debated. To me, it's called Rays of Hope, and it's really meant to focus on what we'd have to lose. It's the sunrise at Wacotahatchee, and it's it's really just meant to show the spirituality of nature and the beauty. And as I said, I think it was originally going to just put it as another nature photo, but I don't know. You could tell me if it works for whatever.
Well, I think that the two quote unquote categories, they go together. They totally speak to the same thing. Yes, I would have made it a little more horizontal. I'd come down a little bit from the top. I'm not sure that the two clouds at the very top are helping us with the rays thing. Certainly you get props for just having seen it because it's sunrise and you don't see me up at that hour. And the bird.
Yeah.
When you're doing a picture like this, the difference between it just sort of laying there and it being a kind of a picture that's got some substance, it's, got some meat on its bones, is very likely to be a little detail like the little bird. And, I just don't have, it's a heron? Whatever. I don't have a radio controlled bird like that in my pocket to just whip out into any photo. It takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication to do that and to get that. And when you're shooting a picture like this, again, work it. It's dedication. Like, oh, this looks really nice. Let's keep at this and see if something happens. Look for the moment. Be surprised, be delighted, be all of that sort of stuff, because there's no guarantee, no matter how hard you work at it, you're going to get that little extra detail. But in this case, you did work at it and you were rewarded with it. And that's really cool. And conservation wise, we got a whole bunch of stuff going on here because we do have the beauty of the environment. And we have, it's a park, and I guess it's the government in this case, has done something about it. We have this observation deck, and people are there, and they're using the environment. It's having an impact on them. It's a couple of the threads tied together. And again, you could do a whole essay on this place. You could talk to the park rangers. There's a million things you could do to flesh this story out in pictures and even words. As photographers, we have a tendency to just kind of not even want to go there, or we go there by saying, oh, I know a writer, I know a reporter, I know somebody who can tell the parts of the story that aren't really told in photos. They can tell that kind of literal story, and we'll just get them to work on it. I've got to say, here in later life, as like an old, mostly retired guy, interestingly, I've started to enjoy writing, and I've started to take it a little bit seriously and try to work at it a little bit. And of course, my writing is verbose and florid and overwritten and all over the place. It's exactly the opposite of Chainsaw Carl the Cropper's photo editing. But nothing bad happened to me when I did that. It's not toxic. I was actually able to move into that part of storytelling. And it was kind of rewarding, and it was pretty cool, and it might be something that you might want to look at. And again, I'm the metadata guy. Every picture needs a caption. One of the wonders of photography and much of its power is in specificity. It's not a picture of any old walkway at any old place. It's a picture of this walkway in this time and space, in this context. And 100 years from now, when somebody looks at this picture, that's going to be very helpful. Now, this particular picture, they're going to look at it regardless, and they're going to go, oh, this is really beautiful. This is really nice. But I'm of the opinion that there's another layer of importance to photography. And that layer is kind of literal, and it's words, and you kind of write down and you do a caption. It's a couple of sentences. It doesn't have to be written in any particularly wonderful way. Just, 3 of the 5 W's will handle it and tell us what's going on in the picture. And I sort of, I kind of beseech you all to think about that and to do that in your pictures, because they all could be really valuable as we move along. I mean, maybe you were just trying to show us the coyote because the coyote is so magnificent, but there could be more significance to that picture we might not even know 100 years from now. And never mind that, when you have 200,000 pictures and you want to try to find the coyote, with today's technology, and I honestly don't expect this to change radically with artificial intelligence. Everybody thinks that artificial intelligence is going to do everything for us. Oh, no, it's not really. Today's technology, when you go to look for that picture, it's verbal. You're going to look for a coyote. You aren't going to be able to think the concept of a coyote. You've got to look for a coyote, which means writing down the fact that it is a coyote. And artificial intelligence is not going to take human beings out of that job anytime soon. An example that I used in a blog post some years ago was a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And we know what the Eiffel Tower is. Absent that archive aspect of it, it's totally fine. It's just, it is the Eiffel Tower. It doesn't need a caption. Would an artificial intelligence be able to tell us that the picture is of the Eiffel Tower or is of an anhinga or whatever? Well, yeah, someday they probably will. But the only way that artificial intelligence can do that is by learning it the same way that we did. A teacher or our parent or somebody showed us the thing and said, this is the Eiffel Tower, or this is an anhinga. And that's how we learned. And that's my metadata spiel. That's what metadata is all about.
Thank you, Carl. There was one question that popped up. If you can remember back to the tricolored heron, the reflection. The
Saint
question,
Heron.
yeah.
Okay.
Question,
There
is
we
it normal that reflection is darker than the bird in flight?
I would say yes. Optically, that pond is not 100% efficient. So yes, I would say 95, 99% of the time, the reflection is going to be darker. The reflection is also going to be degraded optically. Again, the pond is not perfectly flat. It's not perfectly reflective. Depth of field plays a part here. The reflection is not in the same plane that the real bird is in. And the water, of course, is really ripply. If you look at the feathers on the wing of the bird, you can see where they wiggle back and forth with the ripples, which is wonderful, actually, because it shows us that it is the reflection. And I think that adds a layer to the photo that's really nice. Now, again, depending on your intent, depending on the circumstances, depending on the optical quality of the water that you're dealing with, you might have a situation where the reflection and the directly viewed object are darn near identical. And that's kind of a remarkable thing. You could play off of that. As a photographer, you look at the scene and you go, what's interesting here? What's cool here? What am I gonna do? And if it's the Taj Mahal, you've got all afternoon to think about it. In this particular case, this bird starts to go, you have to react, you have to get the bird in focus and do all of those sorts of things. And it's best to be a little bit loose and leave, some nuance to post-production later. And by the way, last week, Nikon Professional Services did a training webinar on how to focus their new camera, which is really interesting because I'm not a good autofocuser. I'm just not that good at that. I wasn't trained at it, at first. And almost all of the example photos that they used, because a couple of their employees are birders, it was like all bird photos. And it was really pretty cool. It was also very impressive, the actual capabilities of that camera. It's just the new Z9 are, it's just very tremendously impressive. I would love to have a pair of them. Each one costs as much as a good used car. Am I going to have a pair? No, I absolutely am not. But that's a hard thing, and don't let anybody, downplay that for you or belittle it. It's like, yeah, getting these creatures in focus, autofocus notwithstanding, is a hard thing, and nailing one like this is something that you should be commended for.
We do have a contribution from one of our members here that says some of the light is transmitted below the water, therefore the reflection is darker.
Yeah, it's got to go through the water, and essentially the water is not a tremendously efficient transmitter of light. You're going to see some color changes too, because water filters reds and passes blues big time. So, and I think you see it here, actually. The reflected bird is a little cooler than the direct view bird also. Yeah.
Well, I think we've used up our time, Carl.
All righty then.
It was wonderful. Thank you for your contribution. It was well appreciated by everyone. And we hope to see you again sometime.
Okay then.
And you said you have this new business that you're doing. If you want to leave your in your chat your contact information.
Oh, I can do that, sure enough. So I can be found at carlseibert.com and go to the website. There's a contact page. You can get in touch with me. You can send me an email. My phone number's all over, my business phone number's all over the thing. You can go to my blog, which is on that website. It's called metadatamatters.blog, and you can be subjected to the evangelism there, and you can learn how to mark up images with metadata, how to put captions on them, how to put keywords on them, what's the difference, and all that stuff. It's all there. There's a YouTube channel that's got a lot of stuff about metadata, and also has a lot of stuff about using particular software, particularly Photomechanic. So yeah, if anybody wants to visit, I'm here.
Great. And for everybody that if they didn't catch any part of this presentation, we will have it available. We have recorded it, and so it will be available probably in about a week or so on the website, the Audubon Everglades website. And if you need more specifics, just email us at Audubon Everglades and we'll direct you to where those can be found. So I'm going to say good night, everybody. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Carl, again for a wonderful evening and a lot of information.
All righty. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. You take care. Good night, everybody.
Have fun.
Okay, so now I have to figure out how to